everyone, and welcome to The Forge podcast. TBD name, TBH, to be honest. We don't really know. I figured since we're artificers, we are crafting... you get it. You know, I invite anyone in the comments really to leave a better name if you have it, or as well as our host here too. I'm Mike, ArtificerDM's community manager and content creator, and joined with me is...
Yeah, Artificer Joe, founder of Artificer as well as product designer.
Cool. I am Artificer Falcon, lead developer of ArtificerDM.
As fellow world builders, we have several decades combined experience, as well as an amazing community of storytellers, and we really kind of wanted to do this podcast for you guys, for those who are just beginning as DMs, or those who have been doing D&D for so long, or any other sort of storytelling platform, and want some creative ideas. Well, we are chock full of them, and we want to provide them to you guys here. And if you're ever so inclined, to include those worlds and organize them within ArtificerDM. We have a bunch of tools for you guys to utilize, so it's all there for you. The first idea that I had, and again, we're still trying to find our footing, to be quite honest. This is the first time we've recorded this, first time we're doing a podcast. The first segment I made was item craft. Artificers love crafting magical items, and we're no different. We each have a magic item for you guys to use in your own world, and I invite anyone here who would like to go first.
I can kick us off.
Yeah, go for it, Joe. What do you got?
Yeah, so mine I think is more of a concept. So I think there's probably a lot of DMs that have experienced, especially in your first campaign. I fell in love with magic items. I love the concept of them, but I let it get a little bit out of hand. If you've watched Critical 1, Campaign 1, you know, Matt Mercer kind of let the weapons get a little bit out of hand in terms of balancing. So kind of one of the ways that I tried to combat that was I did a single weapon for my players. And I said, you're probably not going to find one. If you do, it's not going to be better than the one I give you. So I had a little bit more control. And as a concept, it's a progressive weapon. So as my players level up, they gain certain abilities with it. So mine's very flavored for my world. But Ysmyr's Blade, it is a longsword or a greatsword, depending on how it's chosen to be wielded. So if you go for two hands, you do get the 2d6 of the greatsword, or you can go to 1d8 for a longsword. Depending on the type of combat. I like that because it let the player be pretty flexible with it.
What's the name of it again?
What was
the name of it?
Ysmyr's Blade. So Ysmyr, a planet that is tidally and polar. I forget the exact.
It's named after a planet.
Yes, it's named after a planet. There's a whole backstory there, Mike. The character that it's made for, it's very themed for them. I love tying them in narratively. Oh, yeah. So, first level, just to go through this, while wielding the blade, you have a +2 to deception and persuasion checks against humanoids. Why was that important for this player? They are trying to hide their true identity because they are from another planet. And it was very difficult for them to try and fit in, so I tried to give them a little help to make some deception and persuasion checks at the start of the campaign. They're playing a paladin, so pretty straightforward and easy for them with the high charisma to get started, but was a big help to them. And then on the combat side, outside RP, once per day, they could use a draining strike, which is just 1d4 necrotic, and then they would heal 1d4 hit points. I'm not going to go into full details on each one of these, but level 4, gain the warlock ability, Mask of Many Faces. Again, going into the disguising.
This is a powerful blade already.
Yeah, that is.
It is a very powerful blade. Yes,
and it sounds like it was made specifically for this player. So did they start off with this?
Yeah.
Did they start off with the magic?
They found it.
Oh, they found it.
Level one. We narratively went through, and in session 1. Everybody got their progressive weapon one way or another. It was an 8-hour session, but that was all session 1 was yes. Level 7, we get, let's see, once per long rest, you can re-roll a deception or persuasion check if you didn't like the roll. And then they gained a +1 to melee attack and damage rolls, and then a +1 to athletics checks. Level 10's where it gets really fun. Upon reducing an enemy to 0, all enemies within a 30-foot radius must pass a DC 12 Wisdom check or become frightened. So it's really low DC, but frightened to a lot of enemies. That's probably the most overpowered piece. We didn't get to level 10 yet, so probably going to tone that down before we get there. But then they pick up a fly speed of 10 feet as well.
Oh, this thing's insane.
Just 10 feet. Yes, but it's 10 feet because it's supposed to. He wanted a jetpack, and I was like, "You're not getting the jetpack." But
Right.
So it's
That's
not.
great.
If flavor-wise, it acts kind of like a jetpack, so they can only go like, up onto a platform 10 feet or
It's
something
like a double
that.
jump.
But as it kept, as it keeps going, level 13 you get +2, and then let's see, once per long rest you basically get a tripping attack. And then 17 it gets crazy. Again, I mean, +2 to your strength score. We're just going for it at that point. Once per long rest, you can cast Dominate Person or Dominate Monster.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, it's getting crazy here. And then this is my favorite one. Once per long rest, you can spend your bonus action, your reaction, and all of your movement, and your action to change a melee attack roll to a critical hit. So you just like lock yourself down for a turn, but you get a crit, and only once. And it's a paladin, so they're pumping a divine smite into that for
Yeah,
sure. So,
of course.
but they get to feel like, from a player standpoint, I mean, that's got to be super exciting. I didn't play up to this level with them yet, so but I just think it's like, man, I'm going to spend it all, and then as a DM, just try and take advantage of it. Like I'm locked down, I'm staying right here. The fly speed goes up to 20, and then at level 20, if we ever made it that far, fly speed would go up to 50 feet. So, yes, very powerful, but magic items are super hard to come by. So this is really all they're getting for magic items. They're locked into it. It's 2 attunement slots. I should have mentioned that earlier.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, 2 attunement slots. So I really like the concept and some of the other that my players got of these progressive weapons of like spending other resources that they have. And that kind of comes from Baldur's Gate 3 of like, their actual laid out like resources every turn that you get of like movement speed, of bonus action, reaction. And so I was just like, all right, these resources, how can I use them in different ways? So on the other ones, on some of the other weapons, it's the same concept of like, you could spend your reaction, your bonus action, or 50% of your movement speed to gain this buff. But yeah, that's.
Can I offer something? Yeah, there's a lot of interactability.
Yeah.
So your player found this from the abilities that you've laid out and how dangerous this thing could be. Because obviously someone in your world, again, I don't know what your world holds, but in your world, if this belonged to someone or someone crafted it, I can only imagine this probably belonged to a bad guy. To be fully honest, that the original owner or crafter probably was a bad guy. Because if you're trying to deceive someone, of course you're going to build a magic item that helps you deceive people. I know your player is using it for like personal reasons. Like, I just don't want you to know who I am. I can definitely see a BBEG hold this and go, if I really wanted to kill you, I just need to stand still and kill you.
So exactly. Yeah. Narratively, this comes directly from the big bad of the whole campaign.
Called it.
My player doesn't watch it.
Called it.
And they are from the other planet that they're from, and actually the player doesn't know it because they gained amnesia. But they don't know that that's who it is, and that person kind of acts as kind of almost like a patron to them, or as a deity that they're unaware of.
No.
So always talking to them, feeding stuff, but that's who their oath is to, is the big bad of basically the whole campaign. So narratively, I was like trying to crunch the numbers to figure out how to make it work, but I was like getting ready for that speech of the big bad that was like, and you used my blade to do this while you were on this planet. You were supposed to strike people down or something like that. So yes.
Why do you think it was built this way?
What do you say, Mike?
That'd be a great thing for your villain to be like, why do you think it was built this way to do this? It wasn't there to do what you're doing. Did you read between the lines at all? It would have been like, you're so dumb for not figuring this out.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's what I got.
Incredible.
No, that's wild. That's super cool. So I also have more of a conceptual item with a little bit quite a lot less crunch, more open to interpretation for depending on the world or what DM kind of wants to put how the DM runs their games. It's kind of gonna go anyway, to be honest, mechanically. But and I kid not, and it sounds so cliche, and I swear it's true. This came to me in a dream. The concept of this.
The best
I was
ideas come
laying
from
in
either
bed
you're
one
driving
night.
in the car, you're in the shower, or you just wake up and you're just like, oh.
It's like I have an epiphany, right? So I have the ring of karmic balance. And what's interesting about this ring is it can become mechanically driven, but I think it really becomes driven by the individual character or player that ends up possessing this item. And honestly, this single item could probably drive an entire character's narrative if the player and the DM work together and let it happen. So essentially what this is, it is a magical ring, and once attuned to, it cannot be removed. It is a cursed item.
Oh, there you go.
So once a player is locked in, they are locked into this. And of course, there's a way to remove cursed items and things like that. But ideally, they are locked into this. And what it does is it is a small golden band with a gemstone placed in the center that starts off as clear crystal. Across the player's journey, depending on choices that they make, individuals that they help, things that they do, that color of the gemstone will shift based on their karmic actions, whether they are taking, helping the needy or full-on murder hobo killing a shopkeeper. I don't know. It can really go either way for the player. But depending on the color of the gemstone turning, clear crystal is balanced, 50-50, 50 good, 50 evil, you kind of ride that line. As you get more good aligned, it turns more from like a sky blue to a pure white, and going the other way, it transitions to like a deep purple to a dark crimson. And depending on the color, the ring grants certain gifts. And this is kind of where it's more conceptual, because really any DM can kind of take this concept
and
kind of run with it in terms of what they want to grant the player, right? So, quick example I had was at level 1, because the whole idea of it is it does progress as the player levels up. It grants more and more powers, also depending on the alignment. So it's kind of a pretty complex item. But at level 1, as you lean more towards good alignment, you get advantage on persuasion checks. Or if it's like more darker alignment and it's more of a deep purple color based on your actions, maybe it gives advantage on deception checks instead. So depending on what way and who's in possession of this, it can become a really interesting narrative piece. As one, is the player enticed by powers to be on either side, and will this single item dictate their actions? Is their player obsessed with this ring? Is it their driving force because they want to unlock that deep dark power, or is it their guiding light? Does the player get obsessed with checking it, constantly basically being guided by the ring in whatever sort of decision making they're doing? I think in the right hands, I think it could be a very powerful, both mechanically driven item, but also a narratively driven item at the same time.
I think that would be the fact that there is a visual tell of your past actions represented by color is also narratively very interesting, because the way you've described it is something that people can strive for. So probably it is known by scholars, I would assume, people who study magic items or are at least aware of legends. So imagine if you walked into, like, you're going into a thieves guild and they see it's bright blue, and maybe one of their scholars is like, "Oh, you're a cop. You're gonna rat us out."
100%.
I can definitely. Or you walk into a king's lair and they're like, "That's deep purple. You've done atrocities. Right. I know, because my court scholars and archivists have told me stories about what you carry. Arrest them." That is
it's a tell too. So now you have another layer of the player also maybe even trying to hide it from both other characters or even in their own party.
It would be great if
Yeah,
the
very
curse
true.
the curse does not allow you to like turn the ring around to hide it. Like it always has to be showing.
It has to be, yeah, that would be perfect. Yeah. And
Yeah.
a
Once it's
part of
locked
the
into your
ring that
finger, you
must
can't
be
turn it.
visible.
Well, or it's illusory too. Like they turn it so they think it looks
Oh.
turned to them, but it's actually
it's
showing
like,
out. Like
yeah.
yeah.
No, for
That's great.
sure.
And if they go for a handshake and it's like
I
you
imagine a
kept your hands
player-
hidden.
Yeah. I imagine a player definitely in the right hands of the player just constantly like, what did that do? What did that do? And then forgetting about it and you being like, you ended up right back in the middle. So,
Yeah.
and then they do go one way or another. And I'm sure, you could really balance the concept out to a point where give them something crazy at the full dark level, and the full light level that just makes them want to strive for one direction or another and like fully act in one way, like basically fully lawful good or chaotic evil on the other side, and like have that dictate the way that their alignment goes.
Oh, for sure. And honestly, even keeping a neutral balance would be, I would imagine, depending on the party, could be super difficult because, like, you as a party are helping people, but then you're like, well, I gotta offset this. I'm gonna go rob this old lady down the street or something like that. Like, it just creates interesting opportunities. And as a DM, could always just be putting just little tidbits through your narrative to kind of entice them to go do certain things.
Yeah.
Knowing a player has this.
I definitely would do the thing where like if someone would be like, I lied to this person, I deceived them, does that change the color? I would have to tell them no. It would be like a perception check and you'd go, okay, above table, these little small evil acts that you're doing, they're so minuscule that it's not fully changing the color to a significant degree, just so that I can remove the fact of people going, and I did something, did it change it? I'm like, listen, small actions result in small effects. You're not doing anything.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now if you go and murder a shopkeeper, then that's a little different.
Boom.
But
End of the life.
No, for sure.
Yeah, I still think it'd be fun for the player to try and figure out what really does cause it to change too. And I think too, the other thing that happens is they probably put it on. They're like, oh, okay, where there's an identify item, and they're like, oh, this is could be really powerful. I'm assuming it's probably a legendary item.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And they're like, wow, it's really powerful. I'm gonna put it on, and then like nothing happens for like 4 sessions, and then they do something like super heroic and positive, and you're like, and the ring changes colors. And they're like, oh, wow. And then you hand them over a little sheet or send them a message with the update.
Yeah.
And then it just snowballs from there.
Because then they're constantly trying to do different things just to figure out what does this ring do. And of course, eventually they're going to figure out, oh, I can't take this off. This thing doesn't come off.
Yeah.
Well, the item I brought to you today, in the same vein of concepts of improvement, my world is definitely based on individuals who are always trying to improve themselves or the items that they've carried, and definitely from lost, unforgotten civilizations and people who are older than old. I have 3 concepts or 3 what is called hilt caps that affix to melee weapons, and I'll get into the full description, but depending on your players and NPCs they meet, whether they are from old civilizations or they are crafted themselves, there are 3 versions of this magic item. The first one's called Dealer's Choice. It is a silver hilt cap that affixes to any melee weapon so long as it has a blunt handle. So double-sided bladed weapons will not work, and I've also specified specifically melee weapons. So obviously bows and crossbows will not work, and as well as the much argued firearms that do actually have a hilt, those will not work as well. The base of the cap has a silver metal spinner with 4 segments. It's split into 4 segments with a stationary arrow. Think roulette wheel. As a bonus action, you can spin Dealer's Choice, and it'll randomly choose one of the types that are. I'll get into the options in a second. Or you can spend a bonus action to do a sleight of hand DC 10 to force the spinner to stop at a specific damage type. The 4 segments are fire, cold, lightning, and acid. Whenever you deal damage, you deal an extra 1d4 points of that selected damage type. So it adds a little concept there where, like, if you're a rogue and you're like, I want to add an extra fire point, like 1d4 fire damage, sleight of hand, bonus action, you're really good at it. And let's pretend you're not good at it. You're a barbarian who dump stat is dex, maybe. Sometimes you're a bit wild. I don't care. I'll spend a bonus action just to turn that. And whatever my blade turns into, it turns into. The next evolve form of it, if you go to a crafter or find someone from these old civilizations, is called House's Call. The DC to sleight of hand is now a 14, and the D4 is now bumped up to a D6. And now there are 6 segments. The aforementioned fire, lightning, ice, and acid, as well as opening up thunder and poison. And the final iteration of it is called Lady's Luck, which now the DC is now an 18. The D6 has moved up to a D8, and it's opened up Radiant and Necrotic, as well as coming up with 1 point of luck, much like the Lucky Feat, and can be recharged after the end of each long rest. Or you could spend a bonus action to expend 50 gold pieces, much like you were gambling, and gain that luck point back.
Ooh, that's super rad.
It does require an attunement.
I think the coolest thing is, theoretically, you just, let's say you have a dagger and you put it on, and then you get a much better dagger later. You could just pop it off and put it on the new one, right?
Exactly.
It kind of evolves with you in that sense. You take it with you to your weapon. I've seen where you guys go with your weapon creation, and I thought I was thinking the same thing. Is I know that there are certain players who enjoy their weapons and don't move on. And then there are players who find a really rad longsword and they're like, screw my axe. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to take that longsword. So I wanted to make an item that was movable, something that can be like affixed off of a dagger's hilt and put onto the handle of a great axe, and it would work just the same. Yeah, because I'm definitely in the latter group of players that I like new stuff. I like shiny new things. I like to find that next magic item, and I'll be like, oh, this thing's going back in the bag of holding, and I'm, this is my new baby, right? That's definitely me. But like you said, Joe, in your campaign, your characters get one like evolving item each narratively. So every player is different for sure.
Yeah. Well, I like too. I think we all, I like the concepts of tying in the magic items to some sort of narrative, and like Mike, yours comes with a quest, which is super cool. Hey, it also gives you kind of a narrative out for downtime too, or hey, where do we go next? You always get to a certain point, especially when playing a longer campaign, where like the next plot hook might not be clear. You can't always just be loading your players up with next thing. But it's a good like side quest, right? To allow your players to like upgrade themselves and very intentionally do it. Or hey, the big fight's coming up and we know in 2 weeks this is going to happen. How are we going to upgrade? We got to go upgrade our hilt so that our +2 sword that we just got can be even better. Each of our items has some form of narrative tie, and I like that yours comes with a quest. I think that's great.
I mean, to break into that, and I like doing that. I have a storytelling method that's called breadcrumbing. I love sprinkling little bits and pieces in the beginning, and then it just continues on and on until I reach what's called a cookie, which is you eat the entire cookie, and I give you a big lore dump. So if any players who are from my campaigns don't, headphones, whatever they call it, earmuffs. The Dealer's Choice, House's Call, and Lady's Luck, for any scholarly type members that are within my party, but they're like, I just want to go to a library. Because sometimes you get players who are like, I just want to go to a library and study. And I've had to build up sort of like folklore within my world. So one of them was sort of a very famous group of friends who were kind of like scholarly types. And they would read up on these people, and they would be like, oh, they're really interesting. It had nothing to do with the narrative currently. I'm breadcrumbing. Then they would go to some tomb and learn that it actually is the tomb of one of these crafters, where they would find the upgraded version, or they would find like a way to upgrade it. And then in the world, they would find that this person's still alive, and they hold the final piece. So there is like a progression of learning about it, finding it, going to where they they think they died, and then learning that they're still alive and crafting.
That's rad. I like that.
That's awesome.
That's super cool.
Nice. Yeah.
Well, hopefully all of these magic items can be utilized in your own store, or at least they cause some inspiration. See, D&D terminology being used for your own games. Last thing we want to leave you guys. Bardic
or otherwise.
Bardic or otherwise. Last thing we want to leave you guys with is that we understand that when it comes to creating your characters, there's only so many backstories. And we've seen numerous backstories being used multiple times. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the story of person finds magical weapon and now they're adventurer, or person was chosen by God and now they are some holy warrior, or my parents died and I got to go revenge. We've heard it all. It's all there. So hopefully with us as DMs, because we're all DMs here, we've created some NPCs as well as backstories that you could utilize for your own characters, which in this segment I'm calling Character Spark. Regardless of your character origins, regardless if they're the stereotypes that I've talked about or there's something interesting, they all have something in common. They began somehow. Somewhere in the world, they decided to set off, or something thrusted them into a world of exploring. So hopefully these new ideas will help you craft your own characters, or at least give you some creative ways to spin the concept of becoming an adventurer. Who wishes to go first?
I'll go first this time. I have a couple of them. One is D&D related. One is actually Pathfinder related.
Oh.
So I'm gonna throw a little wrench in here a little bit with this one. And it'll relate to a character I actually personally play. So the first one is a pretty simple one, and that would be a sorcerer. So I feel like sorcerers are interesting because inherently anything can spark your magical heritage, really. That as the definition of a sorcerer, your magic is bloodline related based on your family history, or really anything along those lines. I mean, it kind of comes to a point where you are a poor shopkeeper and you wake up and all of a sudden you can do fire magic. I mean, that's kind of the whole gist of a sorcerer. It's so spontaneous, and I think you could really play that into any kind of level 0 style backstory, whether you're a peasant or just a regular shopkeep, or even honestly if you were like a guard or something like that, just a very simple town's guardsman, used to that more physical job, and all of a sudden I can do magic now. That's interesting. And it kind of shifts their whole character dynamic, I think. But then the other one, and this actually could relate to a sorcerer as well. So in the Pathfinder 2E campaign that I'm playing in, I am a Kitsune Kineticist. And for those who don't know, in Pathfinder, Kineticists are magic users who essentially open up elemental planes in their hands to use their magic. Now, typically, narratively, something has to happen in order to trigger being able to do this, right? So my character in Pathfinder was essentially just a simple farmer. They went around the world helping other farmers. Their little nomad tribe went around helping other farmers and stuff. And one day they were helping in this one volcanic province of the world, and spontaneously there is an eruption and they are trapped within this eruption. Upon awaking, they realize that they have a literal portal to the fire plane in their hand, in the palm of their hand, and they can now harness that fire ability. So I think natural disasters are also an interesting way that you could narratively awaken, so to speak, a set of abilities in an individual, regardless of rule set, regardless of magic class. I think really anything can apply here. So for my character, because they were a farmer, they already had use of earth powers, but they weren't really an adventurer. They were more of a charity type worker. But with this, they had the unique ability to combine both earth and fire to do some pretty unique magics. Now, for anyone who knows, the Kineticist in Pathfinder is typically called the Avatar class, as you can gain control over all of the elements. So I always kind of found that kind of fun. But you could come up with some really interesting ways in order to be exposed and to unlock those elements through, I think, natural disasters like that. Tsunami, earthquakes, things along those lines.
Is there a reason why this... I mean, I'm trying to think narratively, like, okay, this character went through a natural disaster and unlocked some magical abilities. Would they be adventuring for any particular reason? The only thing I can think of is that maybe some people have heard something got unlocked with this person, and now they're just intrigued by him or her or they, and now it's like, I should probably leave and just try to find out what exactly happened. Maybe it wasn't so natural, the disaster.
So that is definitely part of it. Something
called it again.
Was kind of it turns out you can call these things. So something was definitely hidden in this, for this exact specific scenario, in this volcanic eruption. There was a reason my character unlocked this ability. But in terms of the spark of adventure, the issue was as he awoke 3-4 weeks later from a coma. I mean, he was in a natural disaster, and his nomadic tribe that travels around the world, they don't really have a home, helping individuals and helping other villages, is just gone. He doesn't know where they are. So that was kind of the spark of adventure there, as he is searching for his family, he's searching for his nomadic tribe. What happened to them? Did they just leave him for dead? He doesn't know. So he is now, with these abilities, able to traverse the world on his own, with his new party, searching for his nomadic family.
That's a good push. That's really good.
So,
yeah.
Fortunately, that campaign is on hold due to some scheduling issues with everyone in the party, but I'm really anxious to get back to him because he's a very cool character.
Scheduling.
Yeah. Schedule always. Yes. Always and forever.
Joe, do you have a character spark?
Yeah, I think I have two. One, I just wanted to touch on one of my characters from the last campaign I ran that I thought was really interesting. Was they were like traditionally trained, and I think like a lot of the martial classes, like monk and fighter, specifically, some of the backstories, like, oh, I've trained to do this, and now I get sent out to achieve this goal. The one player in my campaign started out, did the training, became a soldier, was like a really high-ranking soldier, and then something was sent on a mission on a specific quest, and then basically lost all of their abilities while starving in the wastes, right? So like was at level 5 mechanically, like a level 5 fighter, a very skilled in combat, and then like was left, the rest of his company was killed, and he was left to himself to survive in the wastes by himself, and barely made it through, and then found a book on a hillside and communed with the god, and then became a cleric. So super interesting to like lose levels to get back to level 1, and then their mission as a cleric from that on point was to spread the word of a dying god that he is helping to revive, that no one had really heard of in thousands of years. And this book was the last connection on that plane to that god. So thought that was a really interesting backstory from them. The fact, like the concept of like,
there's a symmetry here, like a dying person meeting a dying god.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was the mission, like what the objective for the character was, to get back into adventure, was to just get out and go places. And it was we started the campaign close to home, and it just perfectly narratively fit our starting location and where they had found this dying god. So that was great. Really creative backstory there. My second one is more conceptually, I don't have a character related to it in mind, but I think there's like two types of rogues, right? The rogue that is like actively embracing and somewhat leans a little bit on the morally, like, yeah, I'm gonna steal stuff,
a little gray side,
I'm gonna rob stuff, there's a gray side, or they're an assassin, right? And they end up using it for heroic reasons, but like they lean into it. And then you've got the ones that are like, I'm a hero and I use my abilities for good. So the third that I came up with is kind of like a character that's forced into becoming this, into becoming a rogue, and has this like dexterous ability purely out of the necessity of, you know, maybe saving a family member or something, and they don't want to be an assassin, but they've had to be in order to complete these, you know, trials in their life of their maybe a family member or somebody that they're close to being kidnapped and them having to break in, and then all of a sudden it turns into there's somebody else there, but they can't let the rest of the compound know. And then the rest of the campaign, they're like, you know, I know I can do this, but I don't want to. You know, an assassin that doesn't want to be an assassin. So, the quick concept there, but I think it's an interesting narrative point to like be fighting the thing that makes you great and is like pushing you toward adventure. And adventure might be just running away from your abilities, running away from the fact that you're really good at killing people or you're really good at stealing things, and you don't want to be that anymore. But
it's like inner turmoil.
Hey, there you are. Yeah, inner turmoil for a rogue.
I love it when
I like that.
Specifically rogues. I love it when rogues are not cocky. Rogues by raw can definitely be cocky people. They're skill monkeys. They jump in and they're real good at everything.
I can do that.
You want me to jump around and do that? I can hit you real hard if I really, really wanted to. And I like the concepts of rogues who are like, I'm not as confident as you think I am. Those are the most interesting rogues to me.
For sure. Yeah, and I think like, you know, you're either the confident rogue that can do everything right, or you're the super edgy rogue that's like I hide in the shadows. So one that's maybe just like right in the middle road, and has some internal strife and struggle. They're not cocky. But I guess you could also play the rogue that is like cocky on the outside, but just a mess.
Oh, scared inside. Yeah.
You know?
Full on.
Yeah, just terrified. Yeah. And
Putting on a straight face.
And inside I'm terrified. Yeah.
The concept I bring to
What you got, Mike?
Yeah, the concept I bring to you today, I've given her a name. Her name is Cheyenne Prowl. She is our TLDR, a barbarian who wants peace but can't have it. You're going to come to learn from me that I love working against type and sort of retooling, reflavoring features and abilities other than what it is written out. So I've written a little backstory from what I have here, which is Cheyenne is a mother with 7 kids and her loving husband. She came from the Feywild and during her youth was definitely a little bit of a troublemaker, a bit of a mischief person, and definitely would annoy the odd Fey creature here and there just because she was a child. Child be children. Until she accidentally annoyed the wrong kind of Fey. A curse was put upon her, but it never showed any kind of tellings or anything of the sort. It was just sort of put on her. You know, whether it was a false curse or it was just simply to scare her, regardless. Near the adult years of her life, she moved over to the material plane, and with her husband and her 7 kids. By the way, I should mention she's also a satyr, so she definitely has like deer-like qualities within her. She was in a cabin somewhere in the forest where she would feel homely, fully at peace, hearing the laughter of her kids and sort of the working sounds of her husband out in this sort of forest area. Finally felt complete peace, and during that calm peace feeling, she began to transform into a terrifying Wendigo-like creature. This almost skeletal, elongated form, exaggeration of her deer-like qualities, some kind of extra Feywild magic that afflicted her. It is the curse that she that she received back long ago, which was, you'll never know true peace. And so she is a wild magic barbarian, this concept, and obviously work it out with your DM. But I have done this in the past, and the concept that I built was you can rage normally without utilizing the wild magic subclass features that go in with your rage, because they activate when you rage. So all you do is you get mad, you get extra bonus to damage, and you get resistance. That's all you get. You can rage normally. Any parent out there knows you can rage normally and keep it all in, and that's the concept. You can hold it in and get mad and not explode. Parents have to deal with it. But if you truly wish to utilize your wild magic subclasses, you can reflavor it as you finally going back mentally to that spot on your cabin, hot drink in hand, the laughter of your children around you with the peaceful of nature and a loving husband or partner. You again, it's flavored wise, you can do whatever you want. And that is when flavor wise, you're not, nothing bonus beyond what wild magic rage occurs, but you start to transform into that Wendigo form and become this warped fey creature. So it is very fun to say in game, yeah, I go into a rage, and you just do a rage. Nothing happens. People don't know what's happening. People may ask you, what kind of barbarian are you? It's like, oh, I'm just normal kind. I didn't really go too crazy. And the moment you find that your party needs extra help, tell your DM, I go into a peace. And that is when you activate your wild magic.
I go into a piece. I love that. That's super cool.
Yeah. I love the concept of, something that I enjoyed from campaign 3 of Critical Role was Chetney's transformations for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've got wolf legs and I'm running around, but giving players, the tools to kind of explore, put their own flavor on it in different ways. And I like the concept of the transformation to something else that's a little different, and the different ways you get to explore that and how you utilize that. And I'm sure there's some form of intimidation just to try and attempt to use that if need be, or I love rewarding players when they use the abilities that are at hand creatively, and I feel like there's a lot of potential for that with that.
I'm also a big sucker for, and as a DM, I am a big sucker when players come to me and they go, I wish to debuff myself narratively.
Yeah.
I wish, and it is such a rewarding feeling of going, oh yeah, don't take that +2 for narrative reasons, because then you will take that +2 when it comes to something serious, and then it's awesome. So definitely having that choice of, I'm not going to utilize my subclass at all until I finally need it, I think is really, really fun. And for those who are curious on why you would go out adventuring, well, you have a curse on you. You need to get back to the Feywild, and you may need some help doing that because you're a barbarian. You don't know anything about magic.
That's very true.
Yeah.
You can't transform into a scary creature and scare your kids.
Yeah, that's a pretty
Very
big
true.
incentive if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, I mean, too, narratively to explore along the line, just being away from family too. I mean, there's so much pain to explore there, probably along the line of like finally getting some peace, and then which I'm sure is hard with that many children, and then it finally comes, and then all of a sudden it's ripped away from you immediately. So yeah, that's awesome.
It comes with some trauma, and definitely this character is great if you are a parent D&D player, or if someone who can definitely sort of pull off the parenting, motherly, fatherly type, where you're like a bit of like, you are the caring barbarian. You're not the angry person who gets rage all the time. You have high wisdom maybe, and you're just like, guys, it's fine. Let it go. Act like the parent of the group. You're the mom and dad of the group. Yeah. And
always has a lesson.
It always has a lesson, and it also is very painful to tell other players of like, you can make up 7 kids, 5 kids, 3 kids, and go, you remind me very much of my youngest. And all of a sudden it becomes like, oh no, you have more history about you, don't you, barbarian who is always sad because you can't go back to your family.
Yeah. I think too, leaving some of those threads open as well. If you have 7 kids, I don't know how far spaced out they are, but you might have one that's 30. That then you're in a marketplace as a DM, or a busy city street, or maybe just in the woods, and then you get that opportunity to like inject backstory right into the narrative. Those are some of the most fun moments where some players will just get lost in the story, and it's been a couple sessions and they haven't really thought about their backstory. They've been focused on the task at hand, and then boom, you shove it right back in their face, and they have to address their past, or and then see how that influences their future.
Yeah, yeah.
I love hiding a little subcontext in my characters, and the reason why I pick 7 kids, and I always recommend going 7 or higher, 5 or higher, an extraordinary amount of kids, because the subcontext and the reason why she's a satyr is she always tells people she's not great at being a satyr, because satyrs are known to be musicians, creative types, artists, things like that. The subcontext is I'm not great. She'll never say this out loud, but I'm not great at being a satyr, except in one area, because mythology, satyrs are known for fornication.
Perfect.
Yep.
Love that.
It's oh hey, say
Great.
moms can be sexy too, and that is healthy. So I like adding layers.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, that's
awesome.
good.
But beyond that, guys, hopefully all of that was useful when it comes to your games, whether it's adding a magic item, maybe some story elements behind it, or even just creating a new NPC or player character for your games. I still don't know if Forge is the name we're going to go with. This we will hammer it out like good artificers will. So thank you so much for joining us. Check you guys later. Bye.
Hey, guys,
Bye.
thank you.